up you a king, and I cried in one other scene. But that's what bring him back. So I think you're right about that too. Moving into Thor: Love and War, they got the right person to do it. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
But they gonna have to bring in more characters. Now, getting back on topic, because I know we're still talking about Loki, and like I said, I got a million Marvel questions, so we have to catch up and do another video. They're coming with She-Hulk. How do you feel about that? Because I'm kind of hype about that.
Well, this is something that your Aunt Rebecca, my wife, always talks to me about. And this is something that you got to be worried about sometimes. Perception is reality. And sometimes people can perceive things and it's totally different than what reality is. Okay? But in this world, perception is reality. So as long as they don't over-sexualize the She-Hulk, and give her a brain and show you the fact that not only is she powerful, but she's a very intelligent lawyer, then it'll work. And that human emotion angle. You gotta bring that human emotion, and that's it. If they can make those elements happen and then show the powerhouse that she is, she's not a dumb Hulk like the regular Hulk. She's a smart, thinking Hulk that still has her brain.
Not just bashing stuff.
That's it. And so you gotta bring those elements in the fact, and you got to bring somebody in can kick her ass, because if you just have somebody that just can destroy everything, what's the joy in that?
It's kind of like writing for Superman. It's very hard to do. It's very hard to do.
Well, you got to bring in other Kryptonians.
Right.
That's it. When you have a fight where they're fighting for their lives, then human emotion takes over.
Right.
Because you're fighting an equal. Can you imagine being choked out by a baby? Now imagine being choked out by somebody who's 6'8".
Right.
And that's it.
This the difference too. And I'm excited that they are bringing it in, because you always hear this. I'm glad too, because I wrote a question, this wokeness or the social justice warriors that's pushing these agendas in the movies. I'm for it and against it, and this is the weird part about it. I don't think people necessarily watch superhero movies or watch science fiction and go in and say, I'm a little person, for example. I need to see people in these movies that's under 4 feet represented. I don't think they go and watching Superman or Batman or Star Wars or whatever it is with that in mind on one side. But on the other side, I can tell you the joy that I personally felt of seeing people that look like me on screen and seeing different representation of characters, i.e. like Miles Morales, which they just released a Spider-Man game with him. Great game, you know what I'm saying? So, they have this saying in Hollywood right now, go woke, go broke. Do you think that's true? Or is it just the times changing? Because in some cases, people have, quote unquote, went woke and it didn't work. And, the box office, it didn't work. But in a lot, it does. So, yeah.
First things off, the word woke, I'm sick of hearing it. I think it just sounds ignorant. And if you are enlightened, say I am enlightened. If you are educated, say I'm educated.
Okay.
But sometimes slang needs to be used at home, around people that you're familiar with, that understand it. Because if the rest of the world doesn't understand it, then you come off as being aggressive or violent or things that people don't understand. Now, if you bring them over to your house, then they'll understand what woke means. Right?
Right.
Okay.
You break it down. Okay.
Now, for the most part, when it comes down to Hollywood and the wokeness movement, got to be careful about that. I think right now, television stations like BET, Black Entertainment Television, they're starting to realize that they don't have any viewership anymore because for a moment, a brief second, it was something that was bright and glittering. But if you're not inclusive to white audiences, women,
those are the demographics.
LGBTQ. If you're not bringing these audiences in, that means you're saying, look at me and look at my greatness, and you're becoming not quite a racist, but something very close to it. So you got to be very careful of that. At the same time, people need to step out of their own boxes and say, maybe I need to get out of my own neighborhood and start listening to all the things that the media has told me and try to look at something different through different eyes. And
traveling does that. You're right. It opens you.
Traveling will open you up, and these are the things I think we should wake up to. One of the things I like about Marvel Comics is that when I read them from the age of 8 years old to all the way to the age I am today, 53, I look at it this. I didn't know about New York until I read Spider-Man swinging through the buildings.
Mm-hmm.
I know that Spider-Man is from Queens. I know that Captain America's from Brooklyn.
Daredevil Hell's Kitchen.
From
I didn't even know what Hell's Kitchen was
That's
before
it.
that. Okay.
Luke Cage, where's he from?
Harlem, of course,
That's
man.
right.
Okay.
But we didn't know these things coming up in Kansas.
That is true.
But it opened up a whole new world to us. It opens up all new horizons, and it made us inclusive. Stan Lee, even though he was a Jewish boy, Stanley Leibowitz, okay? He basically said, I don't want people to look at me as a Jew. I want people to look at me as a human being. I don't want people to look at Luke Cage as a black man. I want him to look at him as a superhero. I don't want people to look at T'Challa as an African. I want them to look at him as a ruler, you know. So the thing about it is that Marvel Comics, they helped humanize and take a lot of racism out, a lot of sexism, genderism, all that stuff out of it, and just say there's different people that still are inspired by heroes.
Right, and it's funny you say that because what you kind of saying, what I got out of that is Marvel has been doing this. Social media and the movies being super, super popular is what's making it what it is today, and why even people using social justice warrior in terms like that. That makes sense if you look at it, because if they were doing that back in the 60s, 70s, and 80s and 90s, it's just coming to the forefront. That makes sense. Okay. And that's a good way to look at that too. Also, Marvel's not scared to do it in the comics, and typically the stuff we're seeing now in the MCU is being done in the comics. I'm going to finish Loki, of course, but that kind of guides me in, because I got a lot of questions about upcoming movies too. The Miss Marvel movies. Okay. I'm excited about those. And I'm excited because kids, they got kids. I think sometimes the younger superhero characters, the more we can relate to them. Mm-hmm. Either you're growing up with them while you're reading the comics, or you've been through some of the same stuff they did. Also, them going and figuring out their powers and doing stuff like that is always cool. As far as the Miss Marvel movie is concerned, because Captain Marvel did good overall. I don't know if Brie Larson's going to be included in the new one, but do you think the Miss Marvel will follow the comics as far as stories?
So far, Marvel Comics, they've loosely followed the original storylines.
Okay.
And to their benefit, that's even better, because the storyline I followed when I was a kid is not relevant to you anymore. The storyline, okay. Right? The storyline you followed as a kid is irrelevant to your children anymore.
They don't care.
So the thing about it is that you have to stay up with the times if you're going to do it. That's why I think the magical marriage of Walt Disney along with Marvel and Star Wars, for that matter, it kind of just keeps bringing stuff forward. And I don't know who the creative production powerhouse is that keeps putting these movies forward, but there's a lot of my friends that they talk to me. Hey, I know the Avengers. They may not know anything else, but I saw that Endgame movie.
They do know that, and they enjoy it.
And it's like I saw it with my kids. It's one of the few movies I'm proud to say I was able to see with my kids. And you're like, well, that's good. That's it. Because you can't take your kids to go see The Exorcist.
They just catching up, right? Yeah. And that's what I get out of it, too. Okay. Now, getting back to the episode, we went through 4. Number 5, which happened to be probably my favorite episode out of all of them, because it had all the different Loki variants, and it showed them after they got pruned going into the void. What was your favorite Loki variant?
I think the favorite Loki variant was the classic Loki.
Now, when you say classic, that's the guy we've seen in the light green and the yellow.
Oh, he looked like a clown.
Okay.
He looked like a clown. Okay, I've got notes on him. Let me see. Okay, so I have all the Lokis. Okay. Right. Now, okay, I take that back. I had 2 favorites, and I have to put one above the other. That was the Sylvie Loki. Okay. The Sylvie Loki was the female version. I believe personally, women are smarter than men. That's just it. That's something we have to accept as men.
I normally let them handle, because look, the money and stuff like that. The pair of shoes I'm wearing, I wouldn't even have bought these new shoes or new drawers. I'll be still wearing drawers with holes in them.
That's it.
One for women.
Women smarter, classy.
Yeah,
always will be.
Right.
But Sylvie, she was one of my favorites, just for the simple fact that she looked at things a little differently than just brash violence, but she would kill you.
She was the most unique Loki out of all the variants. Am I right in saying
that?
Well,
you got to understand this.
She had her path.
She'd been fighting since she was a little girl.
Yeah, they took her like early.
That's it.
Okay.
So when you were fighting since you were a little girl, And a woman too.
And they brought up trust issues at the end, but why would she have trust issues?
That's it.
I mean, why would she trust anybody? She didn't have a reason to.
Yeah. But other than Sylvie, classic Loki, because that's the Loki I remember from the comics, that he just throws hands like this and he could change the whole scenery. They've depowered Loki because...
That last scene, he was doing like some crazy... I was like, can Loki do this?
That's the classic Loki.
Okay. Is that after, being older, of course, years, wisdom, gathering your powers? Is he able to do it because of that? Or?
In Marvel Comics, I think Loki started to get depowered after Secret Wars.
Okay.
And maybe even before that. But I just think of it like this. Sometimes you got to depower a person to find out what they're about. And that's it. If he just has all these magical powers and he's godlike, then you're going to say, that's it. Even Thor, he wasn't going to be a very popular person by saying thou and this, but when they made him fat, they gave him some jokes, let him get knocked out by the Hulk.
Even in the first movie, they depowered him the entire movie until the end. Yeah, okay.
Sometimes that's it. Vulnerability.
That's why we really, Spider-Man, you introduced to a lot of Spider-Man comics too, on top of that, but that's why we relate to Spider-Man. When Spider-Man have, bills due, I get that.
That's it.
But Spider-Man got to pay rent, and Spider-Man got the power to go get money. But he's good. He's that good to do the righteous thing. He don't want to upset Uncle Bill and Aunt May, and he's gonna do it the right way.
He could rob a bank one time and live for a year, but he chooses, great power, great responsibility.
Great, that's how it go.
Well, the breakdown I saw with Spider-Man, which I think is just part of the Marvel mythos, is that it's part where Tony Stark is talking to him, and he discovers he's Spider-Man, and he kicks open the ceiling. This is your spider costume? All right. And that was right in Civil War. All right?
Oh, yeah.
So he looks at me and said, why are you doing this? And you know how Tony Stark is, smart. He got an answer for everything.
Right.
But Peter Parker hits him with something he wasn't expecting, and he just says, if I can do the things that I can, and I don't do them, and somebody gets hurt or killed, he said, doesn't that make me the problem as well?
Yeah, and that's a deep, if you think about that, that's a deep
if you can
lesson.
Do something about it and you don't do anything, it's kind of like the saying that says, evil happens when good men do nothing. And that's it.
Every time. It always takes that one person to stand up and say no, and then typically you see people rally behind him even though they had the same conscience that the dude had when he stopped it. Y'all could have said something too, but then when you get a lot of people, then everybody get a little more confident. So that's how that goes. Okay, the Loki variants, I remember a famous comic book cover, I don't know what it was called, but it had all of the different versions of Loki's on it, I think. His character's deep. It has so many layers I didn't know. We knew the Loki that we knew, but when you look into his characters, look into his mythos, it's a lot of different characters to go in with him. And that's what it kind of led me into the episode 5, because that episode was the episode, especially, what do you call him, the voter Loki? The vote
yes.
Loki? He's seen how silly him stabbing people in the back really was. I wanted you to go into that, because that was a good scene.
Okay, well, the vote Loki, there's a parallel to Captain Hook and Peter Pan, because the alligator Loki comes up and bites his hand off.
I didn't even see that.
And he screams like a 10-year-old girl. All that toughness,
right?
And all that, I am here, I brought my army, and I am president. He probably was president on another world. That's why he was the vote Loki and had the little...
He looked like he was running, campaigning. Mm-hmm.
But when that alligator Loki came up and bit his hand off, the first thing I thought about was Captain Hook and Peter Pan. But, it's like this, and I'm sure I'm not the only one that saw something like that. But at the same time, I was just like, okay, that alligator Loki, which I think in many ways, wow. Who thought of this?
They were talking to him. They understood the alligator.
Well, the kid Loki and the classic Loki.
Yeah.
They were the only two that could understand the alligator Loki. But then you had the boastful Loki. And the boastful Loki it looked like he had Mjolnir, but it didn't work like Mjolnir.
It didn't, because it would help him in that bar fight.
And he talked about, I killed Captain America and Iron Man, and I had the 6 Infinity Stones.
Right.
But how the hell did he end up there?
That is the question. And with those Lokis, and that's why episode 5 was one of my favorites, I think we might can get a couple of backstories. Do you think that's possible in maybe season 2 or 3 to tap into some of their backstories?
You got a thing that's coming up in August.
Okay.
And you know what that's called, right?
No, what's coming up in August?
It's called What If.
This might be the best series.
So it's animated. So if there's anything that was touched on that we lost on and we don't know the backstory on it, What If will explain it.
Okay.
And What If is one of those series that I know we'll do it in another podcast perhaps.
Definitely.
But I remember What If the first episode I saw was What If all the Avengers had Iron Man suits. So Tony Stark, he got tired of something going on.
Right.
He made an Iron Man suit for the Wasp that would shrink with the Wasp and grow big with the Wasp. He made an Iron Man suit for Giant Man. He made an Iron Man suit.
And they're tailored to everybody's individual
stuff. And it was weird seeing it. It was a What If episode.
Right.
It was one What If episode. What if Peter Parker became Spider-Man, and they showed him with all 8 appendages, and he was furry like a spider, and eating people's heads off and stuff like that.
Dang,
so What If is one of those places that all the stuff that's not being explored and talked about, backstories in Loki, they could take place in What If.
Okay. That's leaving a realm open for everything, and Marvel is that big of a universe where you need that. One clip I seen at the end was, Tony Stark had got attacked in the desert, when he was over there drinking champagne in the limo, just made a big deal. And when he got bombed, Killmonger showed up. Did you see that clip? Killmonger showed up to save him, because you remember he was in the army around that time. So I was like, what if he would have got with Iron Man early? Could have maybe stopped him from doing, some of the destructive stuff, that he did in the movie. So I said that would have been
Yep.
That's dope. And then, of course, bringing us to Kang. I just call episode 6 Kang the Conqueror, really, because I'm learning so much about this character, and I had a lot of questions about, like you explained earlier who he was, how he explained the backstory of Kang the Conqueror. They kind of summed it up real fast, in the episode. Spoilers, but he did show like a little animatronic,
Well, I'll tell you. Quick chronological history on Kang. His real name is Nathaniel Richards. He's a 31st century scholar, and he's a descendant of Reed Richards. But he may have some ties to Victor Von Doom, also known as Dr.
Doom, baby.
All right?
Yes.
I'm thinking somehow the Reed Richards lineage and the Doom lineage, they marry and intermingle, and they create Nathaniel Richards, who is Kang the Conqueror. All right? He finds and studies Dr. Doom's time travel technology.
Oh, Lord.
And he creates some stuff that travels back to Egypt, where he becomes the pharaoh called Ramatut.
Okay, I've heard of Ramatut.
As Ramatut, he does all types of things. He brings 31st century technology and starts setting up shop back in the past that travels forward to him as he just ages and gets older. Now, after Pharaoh Ramatut, then he designs an armor based on Doom's armor.
Yeah, it covers his whole body.
And he creates this thing called Scarlet Centurion, which is also a badass. Now, when the very end, where you hear "He Who Remains," and he's talking to the rest of them, and he was like, "There's alternate versions of me that are much more evil than what I am.
Way worse.
But the Scarlet Centurion is one of them.
Okay.
They call him Scarlet for a reason, just because of the blood that's just left on his armor after he kills people.
Dang.
That's it.
Okay.
Then, real quick.
Any mutant powers?
No mutant powers.
Okay, because you said Reed Richards. That's the only reason I asked.
Here's the deal with Kang the Conqueror or Nathaniel Richards. It's all intellect. And even if you think of like Reed Richards and the super smart people, their brain, that's what it is, After he gets done as being Scarlet Centurion, all right, he tries to return to his original time, the 31st century.
Okay, go back forward in time.
He overshoots it, I think, by 1,000 years, and he falls into an Earth that's war-torn. You got people that's using weapons that they don't even know where they came from. And it's just all over the place.
It is. Okay.
So this is what created Kang the Conqueror. He takes over that universe, and then he says, "This is what I created, and now I got to try to get back to the 31st century to right all the wrongs.
Yep. And his original wrong by probably introducing the technology too soon.
Listen,
and then in the future, he's seen what that action caused, the war-torn world. So he's basically a cleanup man. He got to clean up all his own problems.
That's it.
Right.
And all the alternate realities problems. So not only his timeline, but everything that diverged out. Sometimes he has to do it in a ruthless manner, which means everybody dies. Sometimes he's got to say, I'll let the TVA take care of that.
Which, the TVA, and that's what I'm asking, TVA and Kang the Conqueror is basically the same thing, right? I mean, we know the episode where they went in, chopped the timekeepers' heads off, and they was robots on some Wizard of Oz type stuff. So, is the TVA and Kang one and the same? Or?
I look at it like this. Analogy, all right. If Kang was God,
right?
Okay, the TVA would be his angels.
Okay, that's a great
analogy.
Or
his demons.
Right, depending on the situation. Because it's different timelines and different. Okay.
Sometimes they have to prune everything. They got to erase the whole timeline. Other times they only have to just take somebody out, like Sylvie as a kid, and
then it'll be the sacred timeline. This sacred timeline basically is getting back to before he kind of found, Dr. Doom's information, went back in time. This is basically getting things back to the status quo of how it was.
Well, whatever happened between him, and I think what he did is that when he went and when he found Doom technology, when Kang found Doom's technology and used it to travel back to ancient times to become Ramatut, he messed up everything right there. There's a thing that's stated that you don't travel back to the past because it's already been done.
Right.
And you don't travel to the future because it's not been written yet. But if you travel to the past, anything you touch in the past, the second his ship sat down, he created 5 different timelines. Mm-hmm. So that was it. I think his biggest Achilles heel for King the Conqueror is him trying to correct his own mistakes.
Right, because it was already too late. Even though you want to do the right thing, it's kind of like Iron Man building Ultron, stuff like that. And they always regret doing it. It seems like they always start off with a good intention for doing something, but overall end up messing up because they're messing with powers that they really don't know about. Okay, see, that's dope. Now, before we conclude, I have one last question, too. This is kind of out of the box. The Eternals. Because I got to bring them into this. Because we got people like Thanos running around doing whatever they want, Kang the Conqueror. The Eternals, as I know them, were created by the Celestials in the comics. Am I right about that?
Well,
or are they the Celestials?
Okay, so the Celestials, they had 2 offspring.
Okay.
One of them is the Eternals, which are the ones that look like human beings. They're beautiful.
Right.
Then you have the Deviants, and I just think of them as the devils.
Okay.
They're twisted, misshapen, but they have the same powers as the Eternals.
Okay.
Some Eternals can create water flowing. Some of them are telekinetic, some of them are telepathic, but they're on a grand scale, like Professor X scale, Jean Grey scale. They're never on a small scale.
Right.
Some of the Deviants are the same way, but since they look like twisted monsters, they're deviants to the world. So for the most part, there are some people that pop up and they don't even know that they're Eternals. Like
they have to be awakened.
Well, not only that, but Eternals, I don't believe they age. They're immortal. Once they hit adulthood, they just stop
25, 30 years. Okay.
So for the most part, one of the ones that I think woke up and didn't know he was an Eternal, you ever heard of the New Mutants?
Yeah.
You ever heard of Cannonball?
Yeah, Cannonball, yeah.
Sam Guthrie?
He got the powers, I wouldn't say like...
He can blast.
Yeah, he got the blast power. I wouldn't say like Havoc, Cyclops' little brother, kind of similar.
No, Cyclops, he can project, whereas Sam, he has a blast field, which can make him invulnerable, which can make him fly. He can do all types of things with him. But for the most part, he found out later on he was an Eternal after he reached adulthood. So Eternals, that's going to be a good way to bring in the new Avengers or the young Avengers, and that's going to be something I think maybe even Kid Loki may be a part of.
And they are gearing up for the young Avengers. You can kind of tell because they're putting seeds in with everybody's kids. They introduced Tony Stark's daughter. You see Ant-Man and the Wasp probably going to have a kid. They introduced that too. With the Eternals movie, what that first trailer, what I liked about it the most was how early in time that they touched down on human civilization. And basically, they didn't give us the technology, but they definitely sparked the, you know what I'm saying? It was the spark of the technology. And people always ask us, were the Eternals, were they able to stop Thanos? What I'm seeing now from thinking of Kang and the Conqueror and how you explain that, and with the Eternals, when Thanos gathered all the Infinity Stones, this was supposed to happen for some reason, because it was part of the timeline. And what happened after that, the blip and all of that, we knew it was supposed to happen in the MCU. So my question is, the Eternals probably didn't stop them because they had a bigger reason why they shouldn't have, you think? Or was just like, well, were they deists, you know, like guys that help civilization? I'm just step back and, you know, let y'all do your thing.
Well, some of that.
Okay.
I think what the Eternals will do, the Eternals are kind of like a mixture of, we're going to go out there and do something like the Avengers, but they're also a mixture of like the Watchers, but we're going to sit back and watch.
Right.
And just let them do their own thing. We'll intervene if it affects us. But if it doesn't affect us, then let them do their thing. Because now if it's something that's going to harm the Eternals, okay, we better get in there and do something. That's it.
So in that movie, we will have a threat level of somebody that...
That's it. If the Eternals have to get involved, it's usually something pretty big.
We talking about Galactus, somebody of that magnitude.
We'll see.
Awesome. Well, this has been great. Like I said, I could talk about this for hours. I do want you to let the viewers I know where they can find you as far as your book and everything is concerned. This would definitely not be the last conversation because I got a million questions, but definitely let them know where they can find you, pick up your material.
If you ever are looking for a good read, The Breedite Invasion, that's BREEDITE Invasion, The Breedite Invasion. Books 1 and 2 are on Amazon.com, and I hope you like it.
Awesome.
Thank you.
We will be back. Please don't forget to like and subscribe to Brandon Smooth TV and share this video. I'll break this one up in segments, and we'll see you next time. Peace.